3. True 7-11 Horror Stories. Story 1. The Night Clerk. Part 1. My name is Jordan, and I was 23 years old when this happened. I worked the overnight shift at a 7-Eleven in suburban Dallas, Texas. It was a Tuesday night, 2:20 a.m., and I was alone behind the counter restocking cigarettes when a man walked through the door. He did not browse the aisles. He did not grab a drink or a snack. He just stood inside the entrance, staring at me. For 3 full minutes, he did not move. He did not speak. He just stared, with eyes that seemed to look right through me. Then he turned around and walked out. He came back every night for the next week. Before I continue, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Because what that man was planning still terrifies me to this day. Part 2. I had been working at that 7-Eleven for about 14 months. It was not the career I had dreamed of, but it paid the bills while I tried to figure out what to do with my life. The overnight shift was the worst, but it also paid the best. Differential pay for working the hours nobody else wanted. The store was in a busy area during the day, near an office park and a few apartment complexes. But at night, the traffic died down to almost nothing. Between midnight and 5 a.m., I might see 10 customers total. Most of them were truckers, night shift workers, or insomniacs looking for energy drinks and snacks. I got used to the solitude. I would stock shelves, clean the coffee machines, mop the floors. Anything to pass the time until my relief showed up at 6. The security setup was standard for a convenience store. Cameras covering the register, the aisles, the entrance, and the parking lot. A panic button under the counter that would alert the police. Bulletproof glass around the register area, though the door to get behind the counter was just regular wood with a basic lock. I felt safe enough. The neighborhood was not great, but it was not terrible either. We had the occasional shoplifter, the occasional drunk causing problems, but nothing serious. That changed when he started showing up. The first night I did not think much of it. People do strange things at 2 in the morning. Maybe he was on something. Maybe he was having a mental health episode. I watched him through the security camera after he left, saw him get into an old pickup truck and drive away. I filed it away as just another weird encounter and moved on with my shift. Then he came back the next night. Part 3. Same time, around 2:20 in the morning. The door chimed, and there he was. This time, I got a better look at him. He was maybe 45 or 50, with a weathered face and grey stubble. He was wearing the same clothes as the night before, a tan work jacket and jeans. His eyes were what caught my attention. They were pale, almost colourless, and they had a flatness to them that made me uncomfortable. He stood in the same spot just inside the entrance and stared at me. "Can I help you with something?" I called out. No response. He just kept staring. "Sir, if you are not going to buy anything, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Still nothing. Just that empty stare. I reached for the phone to call the police. As soon as my hand touched it, he turned and walked out, like he knew exactly what I was about to do. I watched him on the camera getting into the same pickup truck driving away in the same direction. This time, I wrote down the license plate number. The next day, I told my manager about it. He said to call the cops if the guy came back and caused any trouble. Otherwise, there was not much we could do. Standing and staring was not illegal. So I waited. And that night around 2:20, the door chimed again. Part 4. He was there every night that week. Same time, same routine. He would walk in, stand by the entrance, stare at me for a few minutes, then leave. But each night something changed. On the third night, he stood closer. Maybe 10 feet from the counter instead of 20. On the fourth night, he started mouthing words. I could not tell what he was saying, but his lips were moving, forming syllables I could not hear. On the fifth night, he brought a notebook. He stood there, staring at me, writing something down. When I asked what he was doing, he did not respond. He just kept writing. On the sixth night, he took a photograph, pulled out his phone, pointed it at me, and snapped a picture. No attempt to hide what he was doing. Then he turned and left. I called the police that night. They came out, took my statement, wrote down the license plate number I had recorded. They said they would look into it. Nothing happened. On the seventh night, I was ready. I had told my manager I was not comfortable working alone anymore. He said he would try to schedule someone with me, but tonight I was on my own. The door chimed at 2:18, 2 minutes earlier than usual. He walked in, but this time he did not stop at the entrance. He walked straight toward the counter. Part 5. My hand went to the panic button under the counter. My finger hovered over it, ready to press. He stopped about 3 feet from the bulletproof glass, close enough that I could see the individual pores on his skin, the tiny veins in his pale eyes. I know your schedule, Jordan, he said. It was the first time he'd spoken to me. His voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it worse somehow. I know you work Sunday through Thursday 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I know you drive a silver Honda Civic. I know you park in the side lot near the dumpster. I know your apartment is on Maple Street, building C Unit 212. My blood turned to ice. He knew everything about me. I have been watching you for 2 months, he continued. Not just here, everywhere. I know what time you wake up. I know where you buy your groceries. I know you go to the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I pressed the panic button. I didn't know if it would bring help in time, but I pressed it anyway. He saw me do it. He smiled. That gives us about 8 minutes before the police arrive. That is plenty of time. He reached into his jacket. Part 6. I dropped to the floor behind the counter, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I heard him laugh, a soft, breathy laugh that made my skin crawl. Relax, Jordan. I'm not going to hurt you tonight. Tonight is just a warning. I stayed on the floor, not daring to look up. I wanted you to know that I could get to you whenever I want. You are not safe here. You are not safe at home. You are not safe anywhere. I heard his footsteps moving toward the door. I will see you soon, Jordan. Real soon. The door chimed as he left. I stayed on the floor until the police arrived. 2 officers responding to the panic button. I told them everything, showed them. The security footage gave them the license plate number again. They found the truck an hour later. It was parked at an abandoned warehouse about 3 miles away. Inside, they found photographs, dozens of them. Photographs of me at work, at home, at the grocery store, at the gym. Photographs taken over the course of 2 months. They found maps with my routes marked in red. They found notes about my schedule, my habits, my routines. And they found other photographs, other people, other targets. Part 7. The man's name was Earl Wayne Dempsey, 52 years old. He had a history of stalking convictions in 3 different states. He had served time twice and had been released on parole 6 months before he started watching me. When the police searched the warehouse, they found evidence linking him to at least 4 other stalking cases in the Dallas area, all of them following the same pattern. Watching, photographing, mapping routines, building up to something. One of his previous victims, a woman in Oklahoma, had disappeared 3 years ago. She was never found. Earl Dempsey was arrested at a motel 2 days after the incident. He went quietly, the arresting officers said, almost like he was relieved to be caught. He is in prison now, serving 15 years for stalking, harassment, and parole violation. The detective who worked my case told me I was lucky. He said Dempsey was building towards something, and I had caught him before he could execute whatever plan he had been making. I do not feel lucky. I feel like I spent 2 months being hunted and never knew it. Part 8. I quit my job at 7-Eleven the day after they arrested him. I could not go back there. Every time I thought about standing behind that counter, I saw his face pressed against the bulletproof glass, heard his soft voice telling me all the things he knew about my life. I moved out of my apartment and went to stay with my parents in Houston. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media, tried to disappear. For months, I jumped at every sound. I checked behind me constantly. I could not sleep without checking every lock in the house 3 times. The therapist I started seeing said it was normal. Hypervigilance, she called it. A natural response to feeling unsafe. I am 27 now. I work a day job at an accounting firm, surrounded by people with security guards at every entrance. I still do not like being alone at night. I still check the locks more than I should. But the thing that haunts me most is not the stalking itself. It is the 2 months I did not know about. 2 months of him watching me, following me, photographing me. 2 months of building his file, learning my patterns, planning whatever he was planning. And I had no idea. How many of us are being watched right now? How many of us have someone following our routines, memorizing our schedules, taking photographs through our windows? We never know until they want us to know, and by then it might be too late. If you work a night shift, please be careful. Pay attention to the people who come in. Notice the patterns. Trust your instincts. Because someone might be watching you right now, and you might not know until they decide to introduce themselves. Story 2. The Stop Part 1. My name is Marcus, and I was 29 years old when this happened. I was driving from Phoenix to Las Vegas on a Friday night, making good time on an empty highway. Around 1:45 a.m., I pulled off at a 7-Eleven in a small desert town to grab some coffee and use the restroom. The parking lot was empty except for one other car, a white van with no windows parked at the far end. I did not think anything of it at the time, just another traveler stopping for the night. But when I came out of the store 15 minutes later, the van had moved. It was now parked directly behind my car, blocking me in, and the driver was standing between me and my vehicle. If you have ever traveled alone at night, you need to hear this story. Subscribe now and leave a comment, because what happened in that parking lot could happen to anyone. Part 2. I made the Phoenix to Vegas drive about once a month. My sister lived in Las Vegas, and I tried to visit her regularly. The drive was about 4.5 hours, mostly empty highway through the desert. I usually left around 10 p.m. to avoid traffic and arrived around 2 or 3 in the morning. That Friday had been a long day at work, and I was more tired than usual. By 1:30, I was struggling to stay awake. When I saw the exit sign for a small town with gas and food, I decided to stop. The 7-Eleven was just off the highway, one of those isolated desert stops that exist only because of the road. A gas station, a few fast food places, a motel with a flickering vacancy sign. Everything else was darkness and empty desert. The parking lot was poorly lit with only 2 overhead lights, one of which was burned out. My car, a black SUV, was parked near the entrance. The white van was at the far end of the lot, maybe 50 yards away. I noticed the van because it seemed out of place. No windows on the sides, no company logo, just a plain white cargo van with Arizona plates. The driver's side was facing away from me, so I could not see if anyone was inside. I went into the store, nodded at the clerk behind the counter, and headed for the coffee machines. I filled a large cup, added some cream and sugar, then used the restroom in the back. I was in the store for maybe 15 minutes total, long enough to wake up a little, shake off some of the road fatigue. When I walked back outside, everything had changed. Part 3. The white van was no longer at the far end of the lot. It was parked directly behind my SUV, so close that there was no way I could back out. And standing between the van and my car was a man. He was big, maybe 6'3" or 6'4", with broad shoulders and thick arms. He was wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up, so I couldn't see his face clearly. I stopped just outside the store entrance, my coffee in one hand, my keys in the other. "Excuse me," I called out. "You are blocking my car." The man did not respond. He just stood there facing me. I took a step forward. "Hey, I need to leave. Can you move your van?" Still nothing. No movement, no response. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something was very wrong. I looked back at the store. Through the window, I could see the clerk behind the counter looking down at something. He had not noticed what was happening outside. I looked back at the man. He had taken a step forward. Part 4. My instincts were screaming at me to get back inside the store. But my car was right there, just 30 feet away. If I could get past him, get inside, I could drive away. I took another step forward. "Look, I do not want any trouble. Just move your van, and I will be on my way." The man tilted his head slightly, like a dog hearing an unfamiliar sound. Then he spoke. "You are not going anywhere, Marcus." He knew my name. I froze. "How do you know my name?" "I have been following you since Phoenix. You stopped for gas in Wickenburg. You bought a sandwich at the rest area near Congress, and now you're here." He had been following me for over 100 miles, and I had never noticed. "What do you want?" My voice was shaking now. He took another step forward. "I want what is in your wallet. I want your car, and I want you to cooperate. If you cooperate, this ends quick. If you do not..." He reached into his hoodie and pulled out a knife, a big hunting knife with a serrated edge that caught the dim parking lot light. "If you do not cooperate, it ends slow." Part 5. I turned and ran back toward the store. Behind me, I heard him curse and start running. Heavy footsteps pounding on the asphalt. I burst through the store door, the chime ringing overhead. The clerk looked up, startled. "Call 911, I shouted. "There is a man with a knife in the parking lot." The clerk's eyes went wide. He grabbed the phone and started dialing. I turned to look through the window. The man had stopped running. He was standing about 20 feet from the entrance, the knife still in his hand, staring at the store. For a long moment, he just stood there. I could feel his eyes on me, even though I couldn't see his face clearly through the glass. Then he turned and walked quickly back to his van. He got in, started the engine, and backed away from my car. I thought he was going to leave. I thought it was over. But he did not drive toward the highway. He drove toward the side of the building where the parking lot extended around the corner out of sight. He was waiting. Part 6. The police dispatcher said officers were on their way, but the nearest patrol car was 20 minutes out. This was a small town in the middle of nowhere. Help was not coming quickly. The clerk, a young guy named Danny, looked almost as scared as I felt. "He went around the side of the building," I said. "He is still out there." Danny nodded. "The back door. We need to make sure it is locked." We both moved toward the back of the store. The storage room had a door that led to the alley behind the building where deliveries came in. Danny checked the lock. "It is locked. We should be okay." But as he said it, we both heard something. A sound from outside the back door. Someone was trying the handle. Danny backed away from the door. "Oh God, he is back there." The handle rattled again, then stopped. Then we heard footsteps moving along the outside wall toward the front of the building. Danny and I moved back to the main store area. Through the front windows, I could see the parking lot. My car was still there. The van was gone from where it had been parked, but I could see it now, parked on the street just beyond the edge of the lot. Waiting. He was not leaving. He was just repositioning. Part 7. We waited for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. Danny stayed behind the counter near the panic button and the phone. I stood near the entrance, watching the parking lot, watching the van. The man in the hoodie did not show himself again, but I knew he was out there. When the police finally arrived, 2 cruisers with lights flashing, the van was gone. It had slipped away sometime in the last few minutes, disappearing down the highway. I gave the officers my statement. I told them about being followed from Phoenix, about the confrontation in the parking lot, about the knife. One of the officers ran the partial plate number I had remembered. The van came back as stolen, reported missing from a used car lot in Tempe 3 days earlier. They never found him. They escorted me back to the highway and followed me for the next 30 miles until I crossed into Nevada. Then they turned back, and I was on my own again. I did not stop again until I reached my sister's house in Las Vegas. I sat in her driveway for 10 minutes, hands shaking, trying to process what had happened. Part 8. The police investigated but never identified the man. The stolen van was found abandoned in a desert wash 2 weeks later, wiped clean of fingerprints. Whoever he was, he knew how to disappear. I think about that night a lot, how close I came, how easily it could have ended differently. If I had not looked up when I came out of the store, if I had not noticed that the van had moved, if I had just walked to my car without paying attention. He had been following me for over 100 miles. He had watched me stop for gas, watched me buy a sandwich, watched me pull into that 7-Eleven parking lot. He had been planning his move the whole time, and I never noticed. Not once. I do not drive at night anymore. When I visit my sister, I leave early in the morning and arrive before sunset. I stay in well-lit areas around other people. I never stop at isolated gas stations or rest areas. But the thing that haunts me most is not what happened. It is what almost happened. He said he wanted my wallet and my car. But why the knife? Why the van with no windows? Why follow me for 100 miles? When he could have picked an easier target closer to the city, I do not think he just wanted my wallet and my car. I think he wanted something else. And I think the only reason I am alive is because I ran. If you travel alone at night, please be careful. Watch the cars around you. Notice who pulls off when you pull off. Trust your instincts. Because there are predators out there who look for people like us. People alone, far from help, vulnerable. And by the time you notice them, it might already be too late. Story 3. The Storage Room, Part 1. My name is Tyler, and I was 21 years old when this happened. I worked the evening shift at a 7-Eleven in Tucson, Arizona. It was a Thursday night around 10:15 p.m., and my coworker had just stepped out for a smoke break when I heard a sound from the storage room. A thump, like something heavy falling. The storage room was supposed to be empty. I had checked it myself an hour earlier. But when I opened that door and shone my flashlight into the darkness, I saw something that made my heart stop. Eyes. Human eyes reflecting the light staring at me from behind a stack of boxes. Subscribe now before I tell you what happened next. Because this story proves that you never know who might be hiding just a few feet away. Part 2. I had been working at that 7-Eleven for about 8 months. It was a college job, something to pay rent, while I finished my degree at the University of Arizona. The store was near campus, which meant we got a lot of student traffic during the day. But at night, things slowed down. My usual shift was 4 p.m. to midnight. Not the worst hours, but not great either. The evening shift meant dealing with the after-work crowd, then the dinner rush, then the slow trickle of late-night customers. My co-worker that night was a guy named Eddie, a part-timer who worked a few nights a week. Eddie was nice enough, but he was a heavy smoker and took breaks every hour like clockwork. At 10:15, Eddie announced he was going outside for a cigarette. Standard routine. He would be gone for about 10 minutes, leaving me alone on the floor. I did not mind. The store was quiet. Only 2 customers, both of them browsing the snack aisle. I was behind the counter restocking the lottery tickets when I heard the sound. A thump. From the back of the store, from the storage room. I looked up. The storage room door was closed, which was normal. We kept it closed to prevent customers from wandering back there. I waited, listening. Maybe something had fallen off a shelf. It happened sometimes. Then I heard it again. Another thump, and this time I heard something else. Movement, shuffling, like someone walking around. Part 3. I stepped out from behind the counter and walked toward the storage room. The 2 customers had moved to the register, waiting to check out, but I held up a finger. "Just a second," I said. "I need to check something." I approached the storage room door. It was a solid door, no window, with a lock that we rarely used. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. Then very faintly breathing. Heavy, ragged breathing. Someone was in there. My first thought was that it was Eddie. Maybe he'd gone into the storage room before his smoke break, and I had not noticed. "Eddie," I called out. "You in there?" No response. I grabbed the handle and pushed the door open slowly. The storage room was dark. The light switch was on the inside wall about 3 feet from the door. I reached in and flipped it. Nothing happened. The bulb must have burned out. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating shelves of inventory, stacks of boxes, a mop and bucket in the corner. I swept the light across the room. Everything looked normal. Then I saw the eyes. Part 4. In the far corner of the storage room, behind a stack of cardboard boxes, someone was crouching. I could only see part of their face, but the eyes were unmistakable, wide, unblinking, reflecting the light from my phone. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my phone. "Who is there?" My voice cracked. The eyes moved. The person stood up slowly, emerging from behind the boxes. It was a man, maybe 30, maybe older, with a dirty face and matted hair. His clothes were stained and torn. He looked like he had been living rough for a long time. "Please," he said. His voice was hoarse, like he had not spoken in days. "Please, do not call the cops." I backed up another step. "How did you get in here?" "The delivery entrance, this morning. The door was propped open and He trailed off, looking at the floor. "I just needed somewhere to sleep. I should have called the police right then. I should have run out of the storage room and hit the panic button. But something about the way he looked at me made me hesitate. He seemed scared, desperate, not threatening." "You have been in here all day?" I asked. He nodded. "I hid behind the boxes when people came in. I was not going to steal anything. I just needed to rest." I did not know what to do. Part of me felt sorry for him. Another part of me was terrified. Then Eddie walked back in from his smoke break. "Yo, Tyler, what is going on? Why are you in the—" He stopped when he saw the man standing in the storage room. "What the hell?" The man's expression changed. The fear disappeared, replaced by something else, something harder. "Close the door," he said. Part 5. I did not move. Neither did Eddie. The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a knife. A small folding knife, the kind you can buy at any hardware store. Not very big, but sharp enough. I said, "Close the door." Eddie grabbed my arm. "Tyler, come on. We need to get out of here." The man lunged forward. Not at us, but at the door. He slammed it shut and stood in front of it, blocking our exit. We were trapped in the storage room with him. "I did not want it to go this way," he said. His voice was still hoarse, but there was an edge to it now. "I just wanted to sleep, but you had to come snooping around." "Look, man, we do not want any trouble," Eddie said. "Just let us go, and we will pretend this never happened." The man laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You think I am stupid? The second I let you go, you are calling the cops. I have been in this town for 2 days, and I have already had 3 close calls. I cannot afford another one." He took a step toward us. The knife caught the faint light from my phone. "Give me your phones, both of you." Part 6. Eddie and I handed over our phones. The man tucked them into his jacket pocket. "Now we are going to wait here until your store closes. Then you're going to open the safe and give me whatever cash is in there. And then I am going to leave, and you are not going to say a word about this to anyone." I looked at Eddie. He was pale, sweating. I could see the fear in his eyes. "The store doesn't close until 6 a.m., I said. "We are a 24-hour location." The man's face fell. "What? We never close. There is always someone here." He started pacing the knife swinging in his hand. No, 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 that is not. I did not plan for this. He was unraveling. Whatever fragile control he had was slipping away. That is when I noticed the gap. The storage room had a small window near the ceiling about 2 feet by 1 foot. It was meant for ventilation, not access. But it was open, and if I could boost Eddie up, he might be able to squeeze through. I caught Eddie's eye and glanced at the window. He followed my gaze and gave a tiny nod. "Look," I said to the man, trying to keep his attention on me. "There has to be another way out of this. You do not have to hurt anyone." He stopped pacing and looked at me. "I do not want to hurt anyone. I just need money. I have been on the road for months. I am tired, I am hungry, and I just need enough to get somewhere safe. I understand, I do. But if you hurt us, things are going to get a lot worse for you." While I talked, Eddie was slowly moving toward the wall beneath the window. The man did not notice. He was too focused on me, on his own spiraling thoughts. "Maybe I can help," I said. "I have some cash in my wallet. It is not much, but it is something. You could take it and go. We'll wait an hour before we call anyone." He considered this. I could see the desperation in his eyes, the exhaustion. "How much?" he asked. "Maybe $60, $70. Behind him, Eddie had reached the wall. He was slowly, silently climbing onto a stack of boxes. Part 7. The man took a step toward me. "That is not enough. I need more. The register has maybe 200. I can open it for you, but you have to let us go first." He shook his head. "You are stalling. You are trying to buy time." Behind him, Eddie had reached the window. He was pushing it open wider, trying to squeeze through. The man heard the sound and spun around. "Hey, what are you?" Eddie was halfway through the window. The man lunged toward him, grabbing at his legs. I did not think. I just acted. I grabbed the mop from the corner and swung it at the man's back. It was not a hard hit, but it was enough to throw him off balance. He stumbled forward, releasing Eddie's legs. Eddie squeezed through the window and dropped to the ground outside. The man turned back to me, rage in his eyes. "You should not have done that." He came at me with a knife. I threw the mop at him and ran for the door. I yanked it open and sprinted through the store, past the confused customers out the front entrance. I did not stop running until I reached the gas station across the street. I could see Eddie there, on the phone, talking to what I assumed was the police. Through the 7-Eleven windows, I could see the man. He was not chasing us. He was standing in the middle of the store, looking around, probably realizing that he had no options left. When the police arrived 5 minutes later, he surrendered without a fight. Part 8. His name was Dennis Ray Foster, 36 years old. He had been wanted in 3 states for robbery and assault. He had been living on the road for almost a year, surviving by breaking into stores and houses, stealing whatever he could. The knife he was carrying was connected to an assault case in New Mexico. A store clerk who had surprised him during a break-in. The clerk had survived, but barely. Dennis Foster is in prison, now serving 12 years. The detective who worked the case told me we were lucky. He said Foster had become increasingly desperate and violent over the past few months. The next time someone surprised him, things might not have ended so well. I quit my job at 7-Eleven the week after the incident. I could not go back into that storage room. every time I thought about it, I saw those eyes staring at me from behind the boxes. I transferred to a different school, got a different job, tried to put the whole thing behind me. But some things stay with you. I still think about that moment when I opened the storage room door. How close I came to just ignoring the sound, going back to the register, continuing my shift. If I had done that, Foster would have waited until we closed, and then emerged. We would have been completely unprepared. In a way, hearing that thump saved our lives. I'm 26 now. I work in an office 9 to 5 surrounded by co-workers. I never work alone. I never go into dark rooms without checking them first. And whenever I hear an unexpected sound, I do not ignore it. I investigate. Because you never know who might be hiding just a few feet away, waiting for the moment when you let your guard down. Some people slip through the cracks of society and find their way into the spaces we forget to check. Storage rooms, basements, attics. They watch and wait, desperate, unpredictable, dangerous. And they are closer than you think.